The average man truly does desire to be with one woman to fulfill his and her needs. He believes repetitive lovemaking should always be an undeniable obligation as both partners have equal unification with no right to use sex as power, and therefore it would be unthinkable to justify having a whorish behavior. This is something both partners should have learned early on, as most couples are green or naive to sexual influence and volatilities when their relationships is still new. This attitude, in part, is what mainly justifies men as being a slave of love to their wives. But if the husband breaks the chain of his spouse and falls into the temptations of adultery, then he becomes an abomination and is cursed and punished until he repents. How about that? Be advised, though, that all men and women now are not plagued with these sexual issues in their relationship and actually do religiously accommodate their sexual needs. To say that all women behave adversely and do not augment their sexual passion would be sexist criticism. But in truth, most women do not concede to their biological function of sexual withdrawal, guided by the reality of man's nature's secular rule to provoke a battle of the sexes syndrome between men and women that will more often than not create intimate problems that are quite challenging. In this case, the man's insatiable sex drive is almost a bothersome handicap due to its compelling nature. Curves, handicap, it's there. His significant other either ignores or does not recognize his sex drive to be a vital part of his makeup, which is why she can easily deny him priority status of their sexual activity and still be in love at the same time. Let me clarify the problem in detail. By nature, a woman needs her selected partner to believe that she has many other virtues to offer aside from the value he puts on her vagina. So in the absence of having a captivating sexual urge, part of her wants to reject sex so that her mate can consistently show that he recognizes her true worth, such as wisdom, intelligence, creativity, intuitiveness, independence, and even raising children. It will take the recognition of these type of attributes constantly, and perhaps a few spoils that don't hurt anything, in order to stimulate her mind to feel as sexually aroused to want sex, such as a man does. But it takes all those things. Speaking of spoils, a man tends to be naive, thinking his wallet is the main ticket to being a hero to his beloved in bed until he finds out she is accustomed to his frequent spoils that are always expected, as well as his gallant services. She is therefore no more enthused than any other good deed he does, yet she still wants his labor of love to be a condition to earn sex. Isn't that something? A man wants to be recognized too, but does not depend on it in order to have unconditional intercourse. So as a slave of love, he must work harder to please the unpredictable mind of a woman, as each woman has unique emotions that will randomly determine what level of her selected attributes for the day is needed to possibly make love. And voila, her ability to possess man's power is proven. This will always be a daily challenge and gamble for a man hoping to stay in her favor with less drama and more sex appeal, trust me. Sometimes he wins, but more often he loses, and this is why it behooves the woman to understand his vigorous nature a bit more so that she can empathize, not to hold him hostage so much, to step up his game and acknowledging her needs and values. In spite of it being irrelevant to a woman, by nature, a man is really the one in a constant state of giving a lot more of his own virginity than she does, including material contributions. Nonetheless, if she really believes her mate is at least aware of her values, then she must restore her emotional security and realize that it is morally wrong to allow sex fasting to be the tool for material and behavioral control reasons. Overtaxing a man can push him right out the door. She must continue to share what she promised him as a partnership or commitment. If nothing is done, then nothing will change, and this systemic sexual epidemic will always handicap the virtuous growth of anyone's relationship. The solution? Just fuck them. Actually, it would be easy to say that a man can just self-restrain sexual aggression. But what is the point when any given day He is still sexually teased, tantalized, or aroused just by looking at his partner, especially when she accentuates her endowments. He would therefore still harbor hidden frustration that will interfere with the morale of the relationship. Men that can manage this abstinence will typically have a much lower sex drive anyway, but the majority are still guided by their overwhelming desires, or if nothing else, just the memories of these desires is enough for a strong sex drive to a man. Let's face it, men are trained day in and day out to sexually desire his wife or significant other or partner, and even if he is lacking stamina, again, the memories of his own exotic times with her are never sidetracked, unless he is emotionally compromised or sexually handicapped. Be it as it may, let's start with the realistic solution for the masses. First, men need to stop complaining about women's sexual limitations when they don't disclose the real truth about their own compulsive sexual urges. They need to stop assuming that women automatically knows a man's passion and will give them the sexual attention they need without regard to their own feminine nature that is so very different. Countless men falsely assumes that women desire sex just as much as they do. That is not true in most cases, but it's still oblivious to how women are less eager. Men are definitely oblivious to how women are less eager when expecting such a compulsive orgasm that a man would do almost anything to get. He must also confess to his partner the overwhelming hypnotic physical effect that her sex appeal has on his genetic need for a climatic rush, and how pertinent it is to secure his loyalty to the relationship. He can only blame himself if he does not communicate, as this concealment exploits the wrong message to women in society that instigates the sexual cat and mouse game. Women are led to believe that a man's false claim of having effortless or equal control of his macho sex drive, which is merely a camouflage of his feminine side. Trust me, it is. Men are too embarrassed to reveal the sexual weakness in comparison to her sexual control, but he must let go of his ego in order to accomplish anything. On the other hand, if women can pardon the ignorance of the non-communicating men, then she must trust the fact that there is a biological reason that hundreds of millions of men all over the world have similar aggressive sexual urges and that are not instigated by personal choice. So in understanding man's vulnerability and her ability to fulfill her man's needs, she just needs to love him for what he is and respect his supporting nature, to be gift enough with his personal attributes to warrant her passion and sexuality. She should then lower the bar in her relationship and not be so voracious for spoils. Make love to him with a graceful attitude and let the spoil offerings or gifts become optional for both partners without requiring a tip or trade-off. With this secure freedom, both will never feel as though they are selling themselves away. Committed or married couples vow to be as one is supposed to grow and avoid this sex division. She should also be aware that a woman's attitude during sexual performance is the most important part of a man's satisfaction. Being dead in bed will make all the difference in the world in him coming or going, if you know what I mean. The goal here is to satisfy each other without inhibitions and old school habits that are one-sided and made up rituals. Creating new school rituals that are unbiased with equality will liberate them from the old school sexist behavior. Adopting such an attentive attitude will avoid inciting a sexual revolution or the inherited nature of the cat and mouse game, and thus compel her to be a more willing intimate partner with goodwill so that goodwill can be reflected back from her spouse or significant other. She is obviously not expected to change her nature at will, but it can certainly be manipulated by reason. As mentioned earlier, her goal should be to have a bigger, more compassionate heart to task her own intellect that has been so conditioned to deny his, and in many cases, her own sexual desires. Supportive empathy should follow to inspire her to understand that it is in her best interest to help maintain a healthy spiritual bond and give more stability to their own sexual fellowship. This is from her point of view, this will be a clever, smart, and strategic choice that will maximize the strength of loyalty with greater peace of mind. Committed women will know that their diligent efforts for sexual intimacy without condition, all in all, is truly worth the act against the vile and powerful sexual temptations of society that is often underestimated by those who have blind ignorance and take for granted that just because they have this tie in the knot, marriage makes them unprovoked and untouchable. This is an extreme, naive, and gullible attitude. There's a wicked world out there. And as equal partner, the woman must use her mother's wit and intellect to protect her man with the strategy of her own sexuality. Use your mind and body to protect your husband. Again, it's a wicked world. It's you against the world when it comes to your man. As his united commitment with her, with the woman, protects, embellishes, and stabilizes her well-being without the combined uses of other men that are temptations against her loyalty. He does the same thing. In the end, the women will therefore no longer possess manpower to censor man's sexual behavior that will inevitably problem solve man's sexuality. Amen?
Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about sex.